The Jacksonville Jaguars' playoff destiny is in their hands, and I'll tell you how they stack up against the competition in the AFC on this edition of Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, and it is your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. Shout out to the everydayers that join us each and every day, and I'll tell you where they find their podcast. I don't know where they watch or listen, but wherever they watch or listen, I always just tell them, make sure you tap into that location so you do not miss an episode, just like the one that you're sitting here listening to or watching. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I'll give you a little bit of a roadmap to where we're going to end up. I'll say that first, and then we'll start where I talk about last. How about that? We're going to give you an overall outlook of the playoffs and the Jaguars' potential to get there. Getting healthy players back will help. And we'll talk about some of them in the middle, but we're going to get started here talking about how the Jags stack up against the AFC contenders. And I'm going to make a declaration right now. I would be absolutely shocked if the Jacksonville Jaguars do not make the playoffs this season. Yeah, you heard me. Shocked. Shocked if they don't make the playoffs this season. I'll briefly go through the remainder of their schedule and tell you exactly why I feel that way. Right now, they are the quote-unquote 7th seed if the playoffs ended today, but we know there's more to it than that. They're 1-1 in the division. They're 4-2 in the conference. And when we break the 2 losses down in the conference, you're going to want to kick yourself, because one of them was that terrible, terrible fourth quarter collapse against Houston, and the other one was a game against the Bengals that they should have won, but they did enough to themselves that they didn't get the victory, but they still should have won that game. There was a bad call or two that I know the Jaguars, they kicked themselves about that, and they won 4 straight games after that. But losing those 2 games, you just think about it, the Jaguars would be sitting there right now at 8-2, literally trying to get home field advantage, all right, without that game. Just totally upsets me. So I'll run through the rest of the remainder of the Jaguars' schedule for you here really quick. We know that this week they go and play Arizona. Next week, they're home against the Titans. I expect them to win both of those games. And then they have the first of 2 games against the Indianapolis Colts. If they can get through this weekend and then come home and beat the Titans like they're supposed to, they're literally sitting there at 8-4 with 5 games left. And 2 of them will be against the Colts, who have a very, very tough schedule down the stretch, because 2 of their games are actually against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So after Arizona, Tennessee, and Indy, they close the season with the Jets. That should, in my opinion, get them to 9-4, right? And I'm just saying, I know you got to go out and play, and you got to do, and you got to handle your business, and you got to win games. But to me, that's 9-4. Denver, a game on the road, can really be a game where they just put notice on everybody that there's new policy in town, and the new policy is we're coming, all right? And they play the Colts right after that. So let's just say, for the sake of this discussion, they don't win both of those games. In fact, let's just say they split with the Colts and then they lose a very competitive game at Denver that you don't feel bad about, right? Well, that means they'd be 10-6 with 1 game left against the Tennessee Titans to get them to 11-6. I don't know what the record has to be. I think 10-7 gets you in. But that's the point of even doing this entire show today, is to just let you know where they stand as it pertains to where they are in conjunction with where other teams are as well. The teams that are really, really chasing them right now, or not really, I wouldn't say chasing them, because that may be the wrong way to look at it. You just probably have to look at it from a standpoint of the teams that are absolutely in contention in the AFC. We know the Patriots are 9-2. They look like the team that's going to be getting home field if it's not them, Indy, or Denver. All three of those teams have 2 losses. So those would be if things go this way, it'll be those 3 and either the Steelers or the Ravens. And I would venture to say that it's probably going to be Baltimore because Pittsburgh is super, super banged up. And now Aaron Rodgers has a little bit of an injury. But either way, it's going to be one of those teams. Those 2 teams still play each other down the stretch. So whichever one of them doesn't sweep the other one, they're probably not going to even make the playoffs. So let's just say that those are the 4 teams that are in. Now you're looking at Buffalo at 7-3. You're looking at Jacksonville at 6-4. You're looking at the Chargers at 7-4, the Chiefs at 5-5, and I won't count out the Houston Texans because they got hot lately, and they're 5-5, and they're going to get C.J. Stroud back, and their offensive line has been playing a little bit better, but they got a great defense as well. So those are the teams that are all vying. That's 2, 4. I include the NFC North team. I'm going to include Buffalo, obviously. I'm going to include Miami at 4-7 because, look, they played better as of late. They have. So you can't knock them out if you're saying 10 wins is what you got to do. Can they win 6 in a row? I doubt it. But for the sake of this thing, we're going to include them too. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams, I believe, are vying for 3 playoff spots. The problem is a lot of those teams all play each other. The other thing is the Jaguars actually hold a tiebreaker against 2 of those teams. That's the Chargers and the Chiefs, if they all end up with the same record. So they have an advantage in that respect. They split with Houston, but Houston is 3-1 in the division right now. So the Jaguars have a little bit of work to do. You would think that you could go ahead and mark off the Titans games as 2 games that the Jaguars should win. So it really depends on what they do and how they play when they play the the Indianapolis Colts. That to me is going to be critical, especially if they could get at the very least, get a split. So I think they're in a real, real good spot, man. They are in a super good spot to be in the playoffs, perhaps even hosting a playoff game if it comes down to it, because we know 1 gets a bye, 2, 3, and 4. No, they wouldn't host a playoff game. That's right. All the wild card teams will go on the road. I forgot this is a whole new formula. So no wild card teams at home. So they all go on the road, right? So if they end up with, like right now, they're the 7th seed. They would probably play the team that is the 4th seed. It's 4 against 7, 5 against 6. No, it's 2 against 7. I'm sorry, 2 against 7, 3 against 6, and 4 against 5. So let's just say if the Jaguars are the 7th seed, they would play the 2nd team. They would play either New England, Denver, or the Colts in the first round. Okay. Something that they have to do, in my opinion, they have to get some guys who are banged up and who haven't played or have either been banged up and not played well, get some sort of combination of those dudes back. Jordan Lewis, I'm optimistically hoping that Eric Murray can get it all together and get back on the field. I think they will get Brenton Strange back. And I think they will at some point get Brian Thomas Jr. back. And of course, Anton Harrison. Some of these guys were almost to go according to Liam Cohen. It's going to be critical that they get them back. And I'll tell y'all why in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game really, really exciting, especially when your team's making that late push and you got some Skrilla on the line. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, moving and grooving, rolling along here on Locked On Jaguars, the daily show here we do on the Locked On Podcast Network, which is the #1 sports podcast network. I'm Tony Wiggins, talking about the Jaguars and their potential to make the playoffs and how they stack up against the rest of the AFC. Not necessarily how they stack up from the eye test, but more of how they stack up on paper right now with what's left on their schedule, with what the expectation can be. Right now, it looks like the Jaguars would and should do anywhere between 9-8 and 12-5, right? On the optimistic side of this, maybe, anywhere between there. You go 10-7, 11-6, however it goes. The critical part of this is that they beat the Chargers and the Chiefs. So that gives them a head-to-head advantage. That's like a half a game on both of those teams if they all end up with the same record. So that's a good thing. The ugly thing, if you pay attention to it, is that they got 2 losses that they should not have. Houston, Cincinnati, and we'd be having an entirely different conversation about this team. And this is just how nip and tuck it is and how close it is. Like prior to this game this past weekend, folks were angry, man. Angry. Like the Jaguars aren't in this position. And that's a good thing. And that's because you've forgotten about last year. You're just looking at where they are now and basing your opinion of where they are now on where they should be based on what's going on now with this new staff and these new group of players. They're in a good little spot. They're in a good little spot that we're not used to them being in. But I'm glad that the Jaguar fans are a little bit angry because they could be doing a lot better. And I think that's how we start to develop the expectation of winning and wanting more, as we start forgetting about what used to be, right? One of the things that can happen is they're getting more healthy players back as they start to make this crunch run down these last games, these last 7 games. This is where, when you put yourself in the position to control your own destiny, and they have, if they win the majority of their games, they're going to get into the playoffs, and they control their own destiny. How much of that destiny, there's no cap on it. Like I said, if they totally went out, and y'all might laugh when I say this, if they totally went out, they're 13-4. They win the division if they're 13-4. No doubt in my mind, because I know the Colts have a tough schedule down the stretch. So the Jaguars can win the division if they're 13-4. If they're 12-5, they have a shot at winning the division, especially if they end up tied with the Colts. So if they get people back, Brian Thomas Jr. comes back and he just be 80% of yourself, man, and just make a positive contribution to the team. Brenton Strange comes back and becomes that dual weapon of blocking and pass receiving that allows you a lot of play calling flexibility, because the team doesn't know what you're going to do based on a limit that he doesn't have. He's unlimited. He's not like someone like Evan Ingram, where it's probably best to think that they're going to run or they're trying to fool you. They're going to throw or trying to fool you because he can't block. So it's a situation where they get those 2 guys back. Anton Harrison, if he nurses that leg up, and then you can have Cole Van Lannon back as your swing offensive lineman along with Chuma Edoga. That gives you 7 strong guys going into those games. That's a pretty good place to be. They have a good rotation at running back. I think Jacoby Myers has been absolutely fabulous joining this team. It kind of makes up for missing Travis Hunter. And then on defense, they get their defensive secondary quarterback back in Jordan Lewis whenever he's able to come back. And I think he's chomping at the bit to get back. When he comes back and he's healthy, Jarian Jones, Antonio Johnson, guys have had to be next man up and step up. And they've answered the bell and they've answered the call for the most part. So I believe this is a situation where when they start to add players back, Devin Lloyd is now back for 2 games. He's going to get in more of a groove. And now the young pass rushers, Strigo and Green, BJ Green, they're getting some reps. and they know what they can do. Trayvon is getting healthier as the day goes on. Josh is ignited probably by breaking the all-time sacks record. All of these things are shaping up to the point where the Jaguars are going to be really, really strong and mentally be in a place where they could actually do some damage here and go on a run. I'm going to pull the Colts schedule up for you really, really fast, and it'll make a lot of sense to you. Not only the Jags are 3 games behind the Colts. We all know that. They're 3 games behind the Colts. Here are the Colts' next 3 games. One of them against the Jaguars. The Jaguars is their 3rd of the 3. They play the Chiefs and the Texans. So right now, you're going to either see those 2 teams beat the Colts and continue to hang around and hover around Jacksonville, or the Colts are going to beat them and put them at more and more distance away from Jacksonville and that wild card, and there'll be 2 more teams that has a little bit more work to do. Along with, even if the Chiefs win, the Chiefs still are a game behind the Jaguars as long as the Jaguars don't lose, and they're a game and a half behind the Jaguars because the Jaguars beat them head-to-head. Texans, you can put the Texans, if they start losing, they lose more games and they start moving backwards, that helps you. So it's a little bit of a dilemma. Do you want the Colts to lose to create more distance to ensure that you have a better chance of making the playoffs, or do you want the Colts to win because it gives you a better chance to secure a playoff berth, or do you want them to lose so you can win the division? You're not going to get a bye because that's only the first team, and that's probably going to be one of those teams that are currently sitting there with 2 losses, even though they're going to have more losses, but they got a 2-game head start with a 2.5-game head start in some cases with only 7 games to go. So the Jaguars are literally have to win out and hope some of those other teams lose too. But not only do the Colts play those 3 teams, they got the Jaguars twice, as we know. Let me get to the rest of it. They play Kansas City, the Texans, the Jaguars. Then they go to Seattle. And then they have the 49ers, who are still trying to get a wild card and are still in the race. And then the Colts go to Baltimore, and then they play Green Bay. Okay, no, that's not right. You ain't going to Baltimore and play Green Bay. Here's the thing. They got the 49ers, and then they got the Jaguars against, and then they got the Houston Texans. So, look, Indy doesn't have any games here that are going to be considered easy. KC, Houston, Jacksonville, Seattle, San Francisco, Jacksonville, and Houston. You can catch them. You can definitely catch them. It's going to be extremely interesting how this all unfolds here down the stretch for them. But getting those extra people back, those are just reinforcements. And it happens to be guys that you really, really going into this season thought were going to be the best players on the team or amongst the top 10 best players on the team. Brian Thomas Jr., top 3, top 4. Brenton Strange in that top 10. And he was definitely playing like a top 7 guy before he got injured. And Jordan Lewis, who's going to be the quarterback and the captain of the defense in the first few weeks of the season, looked lights out for the Jaguars. So there's a lot to really, really be optimistic about here. And this is why I said I'd be shocked if they did not make the playoffs. And I'm interested to see what the odds on FanDuel are for them actually making the playoffs. In fact, I'll try to check that in just a second. But there's a lot for us to be excited around here. Now, it starts this week. You can't go out to Arizona and lay an egg. I'll have the crossover with my man Alex Clancy from Locked On Cardinals on Thursday. Can't go out there and forget where you come from. You have to focus on each and every game. But their destiny is right there in their hands, man. We're going to talk more about it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game really, really exciting, especially when your team's making that late push and you got some Skrilla on the line. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, thank y'all for making Locked On Jaguars your first listen. It is your team every day, as it is also the number one. The Locked On Podcast Network is the number one sports podcast network. I'm your host, Tony Wiggins, running it down about the Jaguars and their possibilities of making the playoffs and the fact that they're going to get some heavy-duty reinforcements and guys coming back from injury. And it might have been good that some of those dudes had a time to sit and watch and look. They trust their teammates. They get a proof of concept that everything that they want to do actually works. And they saw what the Jaguars actually did against another team that is a real good team with good players and that is also in playoff contention. Hopefully this wakes them up. And the Houston loss can be something that wakes them up for the rest of the year. It's like you just can't fall asleep. You can't play call the team to sleep if you're the coaches, because if you do that during mid-game, there's no way you're going to crank that thing back up. Impossible. You can't. It's like thinking you're going to the club and then your friend is late to come and pick you up. So you lay down and take a nap, you take your shoes off, and then he says, I'm outside. We can't wake that thing up, man. Ain't no way at this point in my life, ain't no way if that happened once I lay my head on that pillow, I'm getting up going nowhere doing a line dance. That ain't gonna happen to an old dude like me. And it also doesn't happen in football when you just can't turn it back on. It's just too much momentum. And I think that's a little bit of what happened in Houston. So now they learned this lesson. You might win some games doing some things that you shouldn't do or having things happen that shouldn't happen. But one thing for certain, two things for sure. If you keep doing those things expecting the result is going to end up with you winning, you are wrong. And they learned that in Houston. And we know that every single thing that they did in that quarter or didn't do is something that was very, very familiar for the first 7-8 weeks of the season, where they were getting away with that stuff, but still finding a way to win. It's no longer acceptable to just say, hey, we won. Now we have to play a certain way and have a certain level of consistency, professionalism, and efficiency if they're going to have their goals met. And the goal is to give yourself a shot when you get to the playoffs. And I was on the squad show yesterday with me, O'Brien, and Marquise Ogden. And Marcus said something. He said he's talked to friends around the league, former players, and they've all said that they don't want to play Jacksonville. You don't want to see them in the playoffs. And I know exactly why, man, because when you see them at their absolute best, they will be a headache for everybody. They beat the Chiefs too. And I know right now that doesn't look like that big of a deal because the Chiefs are losing games to a lot of people, but the Chiefs are losing games to playoff teams. And they're losing them in a manner where they're competing and it's close, but those are still the champion type football teams and players and coaches. And when you have a win over them and you have a win over the Chargers, that means you can get it done. They have another loss that was pretty competitive for the most part to Seattle. And then they have a loss that was their worst loss of the season was against the Rams. But the Rams in Seattle look like the 2 and 5 seed right now in the NFC. So the Jaguars have good pedigree. They have good wins. They have enough that they can be confident about, but they also have a hard lesson. And the hard lesson is you can never take your foot off the gas. And the things that you do bad and poorly are eventually going to come to light. But they showed us this week that when they want to dial in and play angry and play with urgency, they showed you what they can do. Now, there's going to be the expectation, at least for me, that while it won't be as perfect as it was this past Sunday, it'll still be good enough for them to lean on and then lean into the rest of these games and win 5 of these next games and get to an 11-win point. And that means you'll be probably the 6th seed in the playoffs, perhaps the 5 seed, but more than likely the 6th seed in the playoffs. And that gives you a shot, man. That gives you an absolute shot. That means you'll be playing the 3 seed. And who would be the 3 seed right now? The 3 seed right now is probably going to be, if they don't win the division, the 3 seed will probably be the Colts. If they do win the division, they'll be probably the 3 seed, because I think the 4 seed will be whatever team comes out of the NFC North. So a lot to look forward to. It feels so good to play relevant football and to have football being played on Sundays that's actually going to mean something towards the end of the year. This is where we can do our part, right? That run that they made in 2017 and the runs that they made in 90, 97 and 99, those runs had a lot of fan element to it. And there was a lot of support there. And there's a groundswell of support that allowed these players to go out and play a certain way. I think it's time for us to crank that back up and really, really start believing now and focus on what's in front of you. And what's in front of you is the Jaguars have a very, very good chance of being a playoff team this year. In fact, I have just said that I think they are going to make it. I will be shocked if they do not make the playoffs. I won't be shocked if they win the division. I will be shocked if they don't make the playoffs. I'll be a little bit shocked if they don't play very well down the stretch in these 7 games. I don't think that there's another Houston type meltdown. I don't believe that there's another Rams game where they're just going to get blown out of the water and not look like they're in the same class as another team. I don't. I believe every game the Jaguars play is either going to be a Jaguars convincing win or them playing somebody, letting them know, namely the people I'm talking about is Denver and the Colts, them playing people and letting them know we're coming and you don't want to see us again. And isn't that the most Duval thing ever? That to me is the most Duval thing ever. That, man, keep playing with me and see what happens. That's Jacksonville football. That's who they are. That's that gritty stuff that I'm talking about. And I look forward to the rest of the season. Also look forward to y'all joining me on Locked On NFL in the barbershop every afternoon at 2 o'clock, the second of 2 shows. Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans hosts the morning show. And you need it because it gets you ready for the rest of the day, man. It's like a double shot of espresso. Plus, it helps you understand what's going on in the news cycle from late in the afternoon and the evening from the night prior. And then me, I'll come by in the barbershop and get all in everybody's business and use the clips from local experts from around the league to keep you abreast of what is going on. I love it when we have something positive to talk about, man. 27 and a half minutes today of nothing but pure positivity. The Jaguars are going to make the playoffs. How they make it, well, it's yet to be determined. We'll see you next time on Locked On Jaguars.